Welcome to the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com. Kevin Rogers with you on Thursday, May 13th, 2021, as we got plenty to look at here this afternoon with Major League Baseball and the NBA. We talked about the NFL schedule release yesterday, and of course you could find those lines right here if you scroll down in the NFL. Actually, Week 1 opening odds. Mr. Brady, you click there and you can find all of the odds for Week 1. These are courtesy of the Westgate Superbook out in Las Vegas, and the totals actually came out late yesterday, so you can find all of that in our NFL arena. If you want to make it easy on yourself, go to the NFL home, and you can find the odds right there for Week 1 of the NFL. And the schedule came out yesterday, so much going on as far as that goes, so you can get ready for Week 1 of the NFL already, even in May. So that is there for you when we discussed that yesterday. I am Kevin Rogers, and very happy to have you on with us today. Before we get to baseball and the NBA, I want to remind you about our Daily Insider contest, which we have Monday through Friday here on our YouTube channel. Below this video in the comments section, you can put up your best bet of the day, and that gives you an opportunity to win a week's worth of handicapper picks from one handicapper. It's a $100 value for 1 week, and it's very easy. Just put your user ID from VegasInsider.com along with your best bet for the day, whether it's baseball, hockey, NBA. It can't be a live bet. It's got to be before the game. And put that up, and you will have an opportunity to win the prize of a week's worth of handicapper picks, one handicapper of your choosing, on VegasInsider.com. If you don't have a user ID, go to the register button here, the big yellow button. Click on that. Click on register now, and there's the information to fill out. Create your user ID, password, email address. It's how we get in touch with you. And our marketing team will talk to you, assuming you are the winner, and get your information and give you your prize. So that is there, and you could find that by just going to the register button. If you are not registered, if you are, then you don't have to worry about that step because you've done it already. So user ID, best bet, and also make sure you're a subscriber to our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider too. Okay, let's get started, and we'll begin with Major League Baseball. We'll look ahead to today's games, and you have some afternoon action. Actually, we're going to start at the bottom first and work our way up. Toronto and Atlanta, they start the day in Major League Baseball, coming up at 12:20 at Truist Park. And the Atlanta Braves will be very happy after today. One of two reasons. One, because they'll get a win over Toronto, or B, if they lose, they'll never see Toronto again this season because they're 0-5 against the Blue Jays so far on the campaign, and they look to bounce back today. Charlie Morton was absolutely awful in his last start against the Phillies. Ross Stripling goes for the Dodgers, or say the Dodgers, former Dodger, goes now for the Blue Jays. He's still wearing blue, though. But Atlanta has just struggled at home, and beaten them 5 times so far this season, which is inexcusable for the Atlanta Braves. But that total at 8.5, and Atlanta a heavy favorite there in that game against Toronto. Now let's move up to the earlier games, or the games starting around 1 o'clock in the National League. The Phillies and the Nationals from D.C., and Philadelphia ends up beating Washington in extra innings last night 5-2, a game that got a little hairy as far as the total went. They closed at 8.5, 2-2 going to the 10th, 3 runs in the top of the 10th inning for Philadelphia, and you thought maybe if Washington gets a few runs in the bottom of the 10th, you get a sneaky over, but it ends up staying under the total, and Philadelphia grabs the first 2 of that series. Now they have game number 3 today. Zach Eflin, who has been a very good pitcher for the Phillies, probably the second best Zach in that rotation behind Zach Wheeler. But Eflin, who has had his struggles on the road, he lost his first 2 before winning his last start at Atlanta. That was the game I just mentioned about Charlie Morton which he was lit up on Friday night. Eflin pitched for the Phillies that night and won. So he opposes Patrick Corbin. And Corbin went through a very tough stretch at the end of last season and then going into this season, but he's pitched better his last few starts, and the Nationals beat the Yankees his last start as a road underdog. Now here, it's basically like a pick-em, kind of like the Phillies in this one actually pull off the sweep. Washington's offense has just been dreadful. Simple as that. They can't get anything going, and you still have some bats in that lineup with Trey Turner, with Juan Soto. I mean, Ryan Zimmerman actually hit the ball well for the Nationals of late, but Washington just can't get any offense going, and I just don't have faith in them today against like a pretty good pitcher in Eflin who doesn't walk a lot of batters. Now let's look at the next game, Milwaukee and St. Louis. And a fantastic pitching matchup there at American Family Field. It'll still be Miller Park to me, but American Family Field. And Jack Flaherty, who is unbeaten this year for the Cardinals, goes against Corbin Burns, who's one of the Cy Young candidates now, or one of the favorites in the National League behind Jacob deGrom of the Mets. And Burns is back after he missed a little bit of time. And Burns has yet to walk a batter this year. I mean, this is going to be a really good pitching matchup. You see a total of 6.5. And last night, Milwaukee ended up pulling away from St. Louis late to grab that one. 2 low-scoring games so far between these teams. You wonder if it goes the other way, but you have 2 really good pitchers. Milwaukee's offense is tough to trust at times. And for St. Louis with Flaherty, they haven't lost a start he's made yet. So that's pretty impressive. And Milwaukee favored there at home. And Burns, last time he pitched at home against the Marlins, he lost. So we'll see what he does here coming off the IL. All right, San Francisco and Pittsburgh starts the night action in the National League. Anthony DeSclafani and Will Crowe on the mound. And the Giants off of a 2-game sweep of Texas at home. So now they hit the road. They go east to face the Pirates. And Pittsburgh lost 2 of 3 to the Reds. We're now seeing the true colors of the Pirates, not just black and gold, but we see that they are now trending a bit backwards of late after they had a respectable start to the season. They're still going to be a last-place team in the National League Central. I mean, there's really not a lot of dispute over that. But the Pirates, they won the middle game against the Reds. They actually lost yesterday in extras. They've been all right, but also they're tapering off a little bit. San Francisco playing very well right now, and they're the leaders of the National League West. When you look at what the Giants have done, 22-14, extremely impressive compared to the Dodgers at 20-17, but LA, we know they're going to make their big run sooner or later. Cincinnati and Colorado from Coors Field. And this one's interesting from a lot of perspectives because Colorado actually has been very competitive at home. They split a doubleheader with San Diego yesterday. They won the final game in walk-off fashion. Luis Castillo was an all-star a few years ago. And he's just been dreadful this season for the Reds. He has lost all 3 of his road starts. Now, granted, all is a road underdog. He does not have good numbers in his career as a road underdog, but now he's flipped to a road favorite here, which he should be against Chichi Gonzalez, who is not one of the pitchers to rely on in Major League Baseball. But Castillo's numbers have just been god-awful so far this season. And now he's favored. Cincinnati 5-1 in road series openers this year. Pretty interesting number. So we'll see if they keep that up against the Rockies, who, again, the Rockies have 13 wins, 11 of them are at home. So that's a good job by the Rockies that they're owning a little bit of a home field advantage because on the road they've been the worst team in baseball. But Castillo here, again, he's been unreliable, but as a road favorite, maybe you back him here. He's had some he's had bad first innings this year, which is something to keep an eye on. But at the same time, there still is the pitching advantage with Cincinnati going into this game. The Marlins and the Diamondbacks, Trevor Rogers, he ends up getting the ball tonight. He didn't pitch last night for the Marlins, who beat the Diamondbacks. And they had a bullpen by committee game. And Rogers has been the best pitcher for the Marlins. I mean, also Sandy Alcantara has been good too. But Rogers now a favorite here against Merrill Kelly. And Kelly, unless he's facing the Padres, I don't know how much I trust him, even as a home dog here. But you finally had a road team win in this series between the Marlins and the Diamondbacks because the home team went 5-0 to begin this season. So they meet up in the late game tonight in Arizona. The Royals and Tigers, they start at 1:10 in Detroit. The Royals were in first place 2 weeks ago. They've lost 10 straight. I don't know how that's possible. Of course it's possible, but I just don't know how that team has totally gone backwards that quickly after such a great start. Now, they did lose 4 to Cleveland, who is playing very good baseball now. And they got swept by the White Sox, who are also playing good baseball now. And Chicago is 21-13. Cleveland's 20-14. So you're losing to 2 good teams. But then they've gone on the road, and they've dropped 2 to Detroit, who's now 12-24 in the season. And the Royals go with Daniel Lynch making his 3rd start of his career. He gave up 8 earned runs in less than an inning against the White Sox his last time out. So he'll be fresh going into today's game. And Spencer Turnbull, who was all right for the Tigers last season. He's not Jack Morris. But the Tigers here, a short favorite after they were an underdog the first 2 against Kansas City. So keep an eye on that with the Royals. And Kansas City, they were bad the first game until the last 2 innings when they tied the game at 7 with 7 runs in the 8th and 9th, then lost in walk-off fashion. Lost 4-2 last night. You went with Brady Singer and Daniel Duffy the first 2 games, and now Daniel Lynch going today. So, I don't think the Royals are a bad look today, considering you're getting them as a dog. See if they end their 10-game skid. Detroit team who they swept earlier this season at Comerica Park, but now they can't get anything going. The Twins and White Sox, they wrap up their series in Chicago. That's a low total, but I think for good reason, 7.5. Michael Pineda, been the best pitcher for the Twins this year. Lance Lynn, who has not even been the best pitcher for Chicago, which is interesting because he's been great. It's been Carlos Rodon, and then Lance Lynn's probably second, but Lynn, ERA under 2. Pineda's been very sharp, and Pineda making his first road start since the opener against Milwaukee, or the opening series, I should say, because Maeda started the opener, and then Pineda went in game 2. But he's actually pitched the last 5 games at Target Field, so now he's on the road today. Chicago has scored 9 runs or more in each of the last 4 games. They pound lefties. Pineda's obviously a righty. I don't trust the numbers to stay that way, considering the White Sox beat up on J.A. Happ last night. I think that this is a low-scoring game. You got a pitcher's duel. Minnesota's offense tough to trust at times, so I'm going to say that one stays under the total between the White Sox and the Twins. Now the night action in the American League, Oakland and Boston. Sean Manaea and Garrett Richards. Richards has been awful at Fenway this year. He's been lit up in his 2 starts. Manaea lost his opener to Houston. Oakland 6-0 in his last 6 starts. So something to keep an eye on. Oakland has the best road record in baseball, 10-4. And Manaea has actually gone under the total in his 2 road starts. A's and Red Sox have gone under the first 2 games in Boston. And the A's are on a 6-game under streak on the road. So you have all of that to take into account. And Boston's offense has stunk recently. The Yankees and the Rays from Tropicana Field. And the Yankees, they put up another great pitching performance last night. Garrett Cole with the shutout. Yankees beat the Rays 1-0, so the Yankees getting some revenge on Tampa Bay after losing 5 of the first 6 to start the season. Jameson Taillon and Rich Hill on the mound tonight. And the Yankees favored once again. I don't know, maybe look at Tampa Bay tonight to bust out after they got shut down by Montgomery and Cole the first 2 games. Tough game there in Tampa. The Rangers and Astros, first time they're meeting up this season. And I think Houston is way overpriced tonight. Christian Javier, the first few starts of the season, he was dynamic for the Astros. He struggled a bit of late for Houston, and they've lost both his last starts. Mike Foltynewicz, who came over from Atlanta, or he was designated for assignment. His last stop was in Atlanta. But Foltynewicz, actually, he has pitched well as an underdog. Rangers 3-0 his last 3 as an underdog. and he lost his last start as a favorite against Seattle. Texas has been a good road team. They've not been good in road openers, but they've been a good road team. And Houston, coming off the last 2 wins against the Angels, could be primed for a little bit of a letdown. Javier has not pitched well. I think you can look at Texas here. If you want to go plus 1.5, okay, but I think Texas can definitely pull off the upset. They're a very underrated team. Cleveland and Seattle, they wrap up the night out in the Pacific Northwest. And Zach Plesac, a short favorite here against Logan Gilbert. And the Indians, who beat the Cubs a few times at home, had the sweep of Kansas City. They're really playing well, the Indians. And also, I was in between that. I'm blanking for a second. I can only get so much of this right. Oh, that's right. They got no hit by the Reds in one of those games, and they blasted the Reds in the second game. That's right. I forgot because they had the rain out on Sunday. But Cleveland's still playing very well. And Seattle, they are at home here. I don't know if you fade Plesac here. I mean, that number's dropped a little bit. But Cleveland, they're playing very well right now. All right, let's take a look now at the NBA. Let's first look back at last night. And we're winding down the regular season. We're that close towards the end of the regular season, which is really good because this season, what's funny is that we talk about how long the NBA season is normally, 82 games, 72 games. I feel like this has gone fast. I feel like this NBA season has kind of moved along. It started around Christmas, and now we're almost done. But let's take a look at everything in the NBA from last night. And we'll start with the Hawks. They beat the Wizards again, 121-16. They came back in the fourth quarter to beat Washington. No Bradley Beal again for the Wizards, a game that Washington, frankly, just threw away. But that game barely stayed under the total. John Collins hit a three towards the end to put the Hawks in front for good. But Washington gets another cover. It's now 17-4. The last 21 against the spread for the Wizards. It's a really good job by them. Washington, as long as nothing catastrophic happens, they will be the final play-in team in the Eastern Conference. Meaning, they'll be the 10 probably. Chicago's 2.5 back with a couple to play. So Chicago needs a miracle. But Washington, assuming they get in, because Atlanta clinched the playoff berth last night. Atlanta's the 4 right now. Washington would play Indiana in that 9-10 game, and they played some crazy games so far this year. Boston will play Charlotte. We'll get to Boston and their disaster coming up in just a moment. But Boston, Charlotte's the 7-8. Indiana, Washington would be the 9-10. And the way it works, if you're not sure, the winner of Boston, Charlotte advances to the first round of the playoffs. The loser of Boston, Charlotte plays the winner of Indiana, Washington, and then that's basically a best-of-one play-in game to get that final spot in the playoffs. We'll get the 8th seed. So the winner of the 7-8 gets the 7. So Charlotte would get the 7 seed if they beat Boston in the first round. And then Boston, I guess, right? Is that the way it works? Then Boston, assuming if they lost, then they would play Indiana or Washington. I'm not sure that 7-8 seeding thing works as far as who would go if, let's just say, Boston ended up playing that 9-10 game, if it goes by overall record or not. But regardless, you're in the 7-8, you need one win to get in. If you lose, you have another opportunity to get in by beating the 9-10. So, Atlanta's in, Washington is on the doorstep. San Antonio lost at Brooklyn last night. James Harden came back for the Nets. So the Nets getting close to health. Nets won, laying 4.5. Game went over the total of 232.5. And the Spurs right now, where they're sitting, they are the 10. They're 2 up on Sacramento here down the stretch with, 3 to go? Each team has 3 left because they both played 69 games. So San Antonio up 2 on Sacramento. And the Spurs, if they can get in, then they would play most likely Memphis in that 9-10 game. And we're waiting to see if it's going to be Lakers-Warriors in the 7-8, which would be unbelievable ratings. You get LeBron and Steph, assuming LeBron's healthy by then. Boston and Cleveland and the Celtics, congratulations to them. They keep mailing it in. Everyone sat last night. Kemba Walker was out. Marcus Smart was out. Jaylen Brown's already out. But the Celtics, though, they will be in the play-in game, and they will likely host Charlotte. Well, they can still host Indiana, depending on how things go. So maybe I stand corrected. Indiana could still move past Charlotte, depending on how things go. Then you maybe get Boston, Indiana in the 7-8 game, and then Charlotte, Washington in that 9-10 game. So a lot of things can change, but look at the Celtics. How pathetic is that? 39 points in the first half. They lose by 8 to Cleveland, who, by the way, Cleveland had lost 10 straight games. So the Celtics, I don't know if they're just totally packing it in before they get to the play-in game, but just another pathetic effort by them. Portland wins at Utah 105-98, and that was a double revenge spot for the Blazers. That game slowed down considerably in the second half. Look at that second quarter, 60 points, and you actually, if you watched that game last night, Rudy Gobert had a putback in the final second and a half, and then Nurkic, I think, threw the ball all the way down the court to C.J. McCollum. It was a perfect pass, and McCollum hit a shot at the buzzer, so they scored 4 points in the final second and a half. But then the third and fourth quarters totally tapered off, which kept the game under the total. It was still probably under. It was on an under pace, but the third quarter put it away, and then the fourth quarter, obviously, you see 43 points. Utah's taken 2 of 3 from Portland this year. That's the most points Portland scored against Utah this year was 105. They actually were really limited against Utah. Final regular season home game for the Jazz, so they have a couple. Excuse me, I had a cough there. They had a couple of road games coming up, and then they'll be at home. Utah's up a game and a half over Phoenix for the top spot in the West. So Utah will have home court advantage in the first round. I mean, shoot, if they get home court throughout. But home court advantage, we just have to see if they had home court all the way through, because right now they have the best record in basketball. Up a game and a half on Phoenix. Suns have a game in hand, but the Jazz most likely will have home court all the way through the playoffs. And Utah, as of now, they would, well, it depends, but they could avoid the Lakers until the conference finals, depending on how things go. New Orleans had this nice little ATS covering streak on the road. That came to an abrupt halt last night, giving up 45 in the second to Dallas. They lose 125-107. So the Mavs have already wrapped up the Southwest Division title. They're trying to pass Portland for the 5. So Dallas would play Denver in the first round if that was the case, because Denver looks to be locked into the 4. And if Dallas goes to 6, who do you draw? The Clippers again, who they faced last year. And they lost to the Clippers in the first round, even though Luka had that one game-winning three-pointer, remember, in the bubble. But yeah, if you're Dallas, I don't think you want to play the Clippers, even though they beat the Clippers by 50 earlier this season at Staples Center. But still, that's a team you'd rather face Denver. All you got is Jokic, where the Clippers, you have a lot more firepower. The Rockets beat the Lakers, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. The Lakers beat the Rockets 124-122. LeBron didn't play. Anthony Davis didn't play. Look at that third quarter, 84 points, 43-41. Houston outscores LA. I want to show you this, though, because the Rockets, they'll be a dead story in a few days because their season's going to end. They have 2 games left, Clippers and Hawks. But look at this for the Rockets. 4 straight covers, 6 straight overs for them. And look at that. Look at all those points they're getting in all these games. They'll get a bunch of points against the Clippers, who they just covered against last month. So it's a good job by the Rockets there. Not a good job by the Lakers, but they keep winning, and the Lakers are 40-30 on the season. Now let's look at tonight's games inside of the NBA. And let's begin with Clippers and Hornets. Clippers blew out the Hornets earlier this season in LA. Now they're playing in Charlotte. And the Hornets right now, they're already in the play-in tournament, so they're just now playing for seeding. But look, if you're Charlotte, do you want the 8th seed and go on the road, or the 9th seed and play at home? You want the 8th seed and play on the road. Simple as that. You want to know why? It's very simple. It's very simple. You have two shots to win one if you're the 8 seed. If you're the 9 or the 10, you got to win two. So give me the road game, the two shots to win one. And that's the case for the Hornets. So they got the Clippers, who I mentioned is the 3rd seed right now. LA has been very good on the road as an under team. I think it's 7-1 the last 8. They've really held their opponents in check, and the Clippers are playing well right now. And look, after what happened last year with the meltdown in the playoffs and the bubble, you got to think the Clippers are the threat to win the West. Not Utah, not Phoenix, but probably the Clippers. Milwaukee's at Indiana, and Milwaukee, you see that laying 8.5, that total of 244. My God. But Indiana's been a big over team at home recently, so it's hard to dispute that total. And the Bucks right now, look, you could have the 2-3 seeds be in the finals. Is that crazy? The Bucks and the Clippers, two teams that were a disappointment in the bubble that both lost in the second round last year. Milwaukee's 3 back of Philadelphia. I mean, it looks like Milwaukee will probably settle for that 3. We know Brooklyn's going to be a big threat, but all those guys got to get healthy. But Milwaukee right now, hey, they're playing well. And 19-15 on the road. It's not great, but at least Milwaukee's not as top-heavy as they were at home, where last year they had a great home record, then they ended up going on the road because they had to be on the road in the bubble, and they had no home games, and they ended up losing in the second round of the Heat. Orlando's at Atlanta. Last time they played, the Hawks blew out the Magic. Orlando, again, this team, they have been a very good road underdog, and they just covered at Milwaukee a few nights ago. Atlanta, look, they still need to win to get the Southeast Division title. They're up a half game on the Heat, and they want to get the home court in the first round. But they're laying 14 coming off a division or a playoff clinching win last night against Washington, 2 tough games against the Wizards. Orlando could be worth a look here against Atlanta getting all those points. San Antonio's at New York, and the Knicks laying 5.5 coming off that long road trip in which they had a heartbreaking loss to the Lakers at the end in overtime. They beat the Clippers. They had a tough road trip, and they were playing some really good teams. Now they're playing San Antonio, who, again, has got a lot to play for in the West for the play-in tournament. And the Spurs beat the Knicks last time they played them in San Antonio. So I think that San Antonio, they can be worth a look here, considering the Knicks, they had been so good at home. And they've beaten them once already. Sixers and Heat, they play tonight in Miami. First time Philadelphia's in Miami this season. And if you remember, the 76ers beat the Heat twice earlier this season, way back when at the Wells Fargo Center. And that was a very, I guess, skewed results because Jimmy Butler didn't play. The Heat had a lot of guys out due to COVID. So that really wasn't a fair assessment of this team. And remember, the 76ers had COVID issues early on in the season, too. So you can almost throw those 2 games out. The Heat laying 2 here. Joel Embiid's a question mark for the Sixers. Jimmy Butler's a question mark for the Heat. And Miami, again, they're in the playoffs. Now it's about who do you want to face? I mean, the Heat still have a chance to win the Southeast, so that's still up for grabs. But if they can move up to the 4, they get the home court in the first round against possibly Atlanta. If you're the 5, you play Atlanta. The first 2 games are on the road. If you drop to 6, where the Knicks are right now, then you get Milwaukee, who I don't think they want to face. Maybe if you had your choice of Atlanta or Milwaukee, you're facing Atlanta. I don't really think it takes a brain surgeon to figure that one out. But the Heat there laying 2 against Philadelphia. Sacramento's at Memphis. The Kings have played well of late. They just took 2 from Oklahoma City. They've been a really good under team on the road. So keep an eye on that. Memphis off that huge win over Dallas. Maybe have a letdown with the Grizzlies here. But Memphis right now they are in the play-in game. It's just about where they're going to fall. They're a half game behind Golden State for the 8. So Memphis trying to get to the 8, and again, you want to have the 2 shots at 1 as opposed to having to win 2. Because that second game, you're going to go on the road anyway. So who cares if you're at home in the first game? You're still going to go on the road in the second game. At least if you're on the road in the first game, then if you're the 8, if you're on the road and you lose, you'll get the home court in the second game, so you'll be a higher seed than whoever you play. So you're guaranteed, but I mean, that's a one and done. But Memphis beat Sacramento last time they played. The Kings are playing with some confidence. I mean, Sacramento's 2 back of San Antonio for the 10th spot, so there's still something to play for the Kings. They're not totally dead yet. Chicago gets Toronto at the United Center, and the Bulls have blown out the Raptors. Or, well, I shouldn't say that. They blew them out the first time. They beat them the second time in Tampa. And the Raptors have actually covered 3 straight on the road, so it's something to keep an eye on. I actually like Toronto tonight. I think that's way too many points for the Bulls to lay. And the last time the Bulls were this big of a favorite came against the Magic, and they lost them outright as a 9.5-point favorite. So I'm not too keen on laying the points with the Bulls here. Chicago, they get 2.5 back of Washington. They need a miracle to get to that 10th spot. Maybe the Bulls shouldn't have been 13-21 at home this season. Denver's at Minnesota. First time they're playing since January, and the Nuggets won both those games. Minnesota, give them credit. They're 6-3 their last 9. I know they just beat Orlando and Detroit, which isn't anything to write home about. But Minnesota's actually tried, which is good as opposed to like Detroit, who's tanking. But Minnesota, they're actually putting forth some effort here at the end of the season. And this is a high total. Last time these teams played, the totals were in the low 220s. Now it's at 233.5. But Denver, they're at the 4. They can't go lower than 4. They could get to 3 if they're a game back of the Clippers with 3 to go, so they could still get to 3. But Denver can't be any worse than 4, so they could be settled into that and be fine. And besides, I think Denver, I don't think would mind playing Utah in the first round, or in the second round rather, in that 1-4 potentially. Portland and Phoenix. They wrap up the night in the Valley of the Sun. And Phoenix, a 4.5-point favorite. They beat Portland twice already this season. So double revenge for Portland, second straight night after they lost twice to Utah earlier in the season and beat them last night. So the Blazers, they're playing very well. And Portland now 9-1 the last 10. They've won 5 in a row. And they are sitting in the 5 hole. They still haven't clinched a playoff berth yet. Now, they'll be in the playoffs. It's just about if they'll be in the playoffs or they'll be in the play-in game. Because the teams, look, Dallas is tied with Portland, but Dallas has clinched a berth already. Portland hasn't. The Blazers will somehow be in the playoffs. Now, last year, remember, they played in the play-in game against Memphis. So they want to definitely avoid that because if you fall from 5 to that 8 or so, then you're all of a sudden relegated to facing maybe the 1 seed, where that happened last year against the Lakers. They faced LA early, and they got knocked out early. But Portland here, they can play Denver in the first round if they finish as the 5. So a lot of things changed there for the Blazers, and we'll see what Portland does. Phoenix, they're back home after losing to the Lakers and the Warriors on the road. So Phoenix obviously wants to get on track here moving forward. So that's the look at the NBA for tonight. Don't forget you can buy picks from our handicappers at vegasinsider.com. And $29.95 for handicappers daily picks for the NBA. That's all their picks for the day. Each individual handicapper, $29.95 each. Guaranteed picks is one selection, their best selection of the day. Pay after it wins, $39.95. If it wins, you pay. If it loses, you pay nothing. So that's what you have for the NBA. You have it for Major League Baseball as well. NHL is coming down the stretch. The playoffs start this weekend. There's still some action in the NHL. And over the next few days, Vancouver's making up a lot of games. Saturday, the playoffs start with the Bruins and the Capitals, a bunch of games on Sunday. So the NHL coming up with their playoffs right around the corner. So that's good. And in the NHL, they have the only thing up for grabs right now. Every seed is spoken for in the NHL, but all we're waiting for is the division winner from the West, whether it be Vegas or Colorado. And Vegas up 2 over Colorado. The Golden Knights are done with their season. Avalanche have 1 game to play. Minnesota will be the 3. St. Louis will be the 4. It's just about who's going to be the 1 or the 2 in the West. And obviously, Vegas wins, they'll get St. Louis, who had 61 points. And if Vegas loses, they'll get Minnesota, who had 75. So you'd rather play St. Louis in the first round. Let me remind you again about the our Daily Insider contest, in which you can win a week's worth of handicapper picks of one handicapper for a week, and that's a $100 value. You get it for free. All you got to do is put up your Vegas Insider ID in the comments below, along with a best bet for the day. Your best bet. It cannot be a live bet. Baseball, NBA, hockey. It could be a first 5-inning bet. It could be a player prop. Pretty much your choice on that. And you'll be in the drawing to win the week's worth of handicapper selections from a handicapper of your choosing, and our marketing team will get in contact with you to discuss who you would like. If you're the winner, remember, you got to win your bet. You can't lose your bet, then you can't win. But user ID, your Vegas Insider user ID, and your best bet. Also, make sure you're a subscriber to our YouTube channel. If you do not have a user ID, it's very easy. Go to the register button, the big yellow register button. Free membership. Register now. Create your user ID and password. Email so we get in contact with you. All this information here. It's free to register, so you don't have to worry about paying anything. And you'll have a chance to win the prize. So, again, we appreciate you watching today's edition of the Daily Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. And as always, best of luck with your bets.